back, relax, and maybe get yourself a snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hey guys, so I am here today to do a wrap up for the month of October. It is now November, which is crazy because that means it's only a few months till Christmas. Very exciting. But before I get into what I'm going to be reading for November, I want to wrap up October and tell you what I read in that month. So let's get started. I actually managed to read 23 things in October. A couple of them I did DNF, but I'll go into more details on what they were and why in a mo. But I'm pretty happy with that considering I work. I sometimes don't know how I do it. I think the key is definitely audiobooks, and reading on my Kindle has been really, really good for me recently, but I still managed to read quite a lot of physical ones too. So I'm going to do my usual thing of going from lowest rated to highest rated, and I will tell you a little bit about each of them, but there will be full reviews coming, if not already up, for probably nearly all of them very, very soon. So look out for those. The first couple of books I DNF'd. The first one is The Sound of the Stones by Beth Hammond. This one was one of the SBFBO picks. It just didn't really gel with me. I had a couple of issues with it that I'll go into when I do my wrap up for the next 5, but it just didn't really click with me personally. It wasn't terrible, but it just had a few flaws. The next one I DNF'd was actually Wildwood. This is one of the books that I read as part of the Bookbusters readathon, and I just didn't like it. I got about 80% of the way through this one, and it's a kid's book and it has beautiful illustrations, but I just thought the story was pretty rubbish, so I ended up DNFing that one, and I probably wouldn't have given it more than 2 stars. It was just a bit mediocre, so oh well. The next one I DNF'd is called The Four Powers. Again, it's an SBFBO one, and I will wrap up more about it there, along with The Fall of Wrath, which was the final one I DNF'd this month. So moving on to the ones I actually finished, the first of those is called Showdown. It was a 2-star read for me. It's a super short, very quick sort of novella. It's kind of like the start or the opening chapter of a story, but there's not really any big conclusion. Yeah, it was lacking quite a lot, so I only gave it a 2 stars overall. However, luckily, from here on out are the books that I actually enjoyed and liked. So the first of those is this one, Dusk or Dark or Dawn or Day. I always have to read it because it's very confusing, that title, by Sean Maguire, and I really enjoyed going back to A New World with Sean Maguire. This is only the 2nd series of hers that I've tried. Actually, I think this one is a standalone, but I've read Wayward Children series by her and very much enjoyed it. It was quite fun. It didn't feel too spooky. It kind of felt quite urban, and it was enjoyable. I enjoyed it a lot, but I didn't think it was great. So it wasn't as original as the Wayward Children series is for me, and I didn't think it had quite the same punch, but I did enjoy it and I gave it a 3 stars overall in the end. Another one that got 3 stars from me is Change Agent by Daniel SUAREZ, or SUAREZ. This book was one that I was gifted, and it was definitely an interesting read because I'd never heard of it before. It kind of focuses on genetics and viruses. It's really fascinating and it has a lot going for it, but I think it focuses a bit too heavily on the thriller aspects, and therefore it didn't quite draw me in emotionally enough or really give me a sense of reality. It felt a bit fake in places, but it was a lot of fun and I definitely enjoyed it, so I gave it a 3 stars in the end. Next up, I read At an Uncertain Hour. This is one of the SBFBO books, so I won't talk about it too much, but it focuses on an immortal and is a pretty interesting story, which I gave 3 stars overall. Another one to get 3 stars from me is Pulse. This is another SBFBO one. Again, quite an interesting idea that definitely had some thriller aspects to it. It was again kind of a magical superpower story, which I enjoyed a lot, and I will talk more about that in my wrap up. Another one of the SBFBO titles is called Nobody's Goddess. This one was a pretty feisty book. It was a lot of fun, and I definitely think it was enjoyable to read, even if it did have some flaws, so I gave it 3 stars. And another one that got 3 stars from me is one of my autumn readathon picks, and that was The Dead House by Dawn Kurtagich. It's one of the few autumn readathon books I finished because I had a pretty slow reading week that week for some reason, but this one I did enjoy, and it focuses on 2 characters within one person, so it's kind of drawing on the ideas of like multiple personality disorder. It's definitely interesting. It does have some horror elements and some creepy elements. Personally, it freaked me out, but I think that might just be because the main character is called Caitlin, which is the same name as me, so it felt a bit weird reading that. But it is a fun kind of YA story. definitely an interesting one, does have some issues, so I gave it 3 stars. Next up, I rated one of the SBFBO books a 3.5, and that was SORCERER'S Concubine. This one surprised me actually because it had some really interesting looks at gender and stereotyping, and I definitely felt like it had some original ideas and kind of did some cool things. Again, it wasn't perfect, it had some things I would have changed maybe, but it was still a really enjoyable story and one that I would say may be worth looking into. I'll talk further about what it is to do with in my wrap up. And following on from that is this one, The First 15 Lives of Harry August by Claire North, which I ended up giving 3.52. Again, this one is an interesting concept of an immortal character who kind of keeps coming back life after life and reliving things and changing things and being able to influence the world in a series of different ways. It's very interesting and I liked it a lot. Not quite as much as I liked her other book. I think I preferred Touch of the two of them, but I still really enjoyed this and I definitely intend to read more of her work very soon. Another one that I finally finished is Artemis by Andy Weir. This one got a 3.5 stars from me in the end. I did really enjoy bits of it and I thought it was a lot of fun, but I think that it didn't quite pack the same emotional punch as The Martian for me, so even though I liked it a lot and I had a lot of fun reading it, I only gave it 3.5. I will go into more detail on this one in a separate review because I think a lot of you guys are interested in hearing what this one is about. Next up is one of the Welcome Book Prize books, and that is this one, Perfect People by Peter James. I definitely enjoyed this a lot more than I expected to. It's quite a chunky book and it's actually a kind of thriller with medicine and genetics being the key themes throughout. We follow some young children who are genetically created, supposedly to be perfect people, but actually there turns out to be an awful lot wrong with their personalities because of unforeseen circumstances, and it's a really fascinating look at genetics and what genetic modification could turn into if we're not careful. It does have some annoying plot things going on that make it more of a thriller, and for me it was a bit over dramatic in places. It was a lot of fun though, and I did really enjoy reading it, and I was always wanting to get back to reading it, so I ended up giving it like just under a 4 stars, 3.75 if that's allowed. I'm gonna say it is. Next up, another one of the SBFBO books that's getting 4 stars from me is The Legacy Chronicles The Sword. This one definitely felt like it was quite a big epic world, lots going on, and definitely an interesting start to a series that I think I would follow further. I will talk more about this one in my wrap up. Next, I have a short story collection that I read and gave 4 stars to, and this is The Birds and Other Stories by Daphne du Maurier. I had never read any of Daphne du Maurier's work, but I'd heard nothing but great things about her from both Lauren from Lauren and the Books and Mercedes from Mercy's Bookish Musings, and quite a few other people too. Everyone seemed to like her and her sort of gothic-y weird stories. So I decided to try this and I was not disappointed. I definitely enjoyed it. I would certainly recommend it. Of all the stories, The Birds was my favourite. Next up, another one that got 4 stars from me is Umbra. I've already talked about this and wrapped it up in one of my SBFBO wrap-ups, so I'll link it down below. And it did win that round because it was a lot of fun. It deals with a world that's focusing on shadows and it's all really steampunky, industrial. It's really, really cool and I liked it a lot, so I gave that 4 stars. Another one that got 4 stars from me is Thickety, A Path Begins, which is book 1 in the Thickety series. I really, really enjoyed this. It is a kids series. It's kind of a fun, light-hearted, but with creepy undertones story about a witch and the daughter of a witch and what she gets up to and how she's bullied in this town and then how she overcomes that bullying and what goes on. It definitely goes to darker places than I thought it would, which is great, and I really enjoyed it, so much so that I've just picked up the second one in the series to read at some point as well, so I'll certainly be carrying on with this. Another one that got 4 stars from me is Age of Swords, which is by Michael J. Sullivan. I finally got around to reading this. I don't know why it's taken me so long because it came out a while ago, but he recently did a Kickstarter for his new Riaria book, which I did back and I will be getting a copy of, and that reminded me that I'd not read this one yet, so I went back to reading it and I loved it and it was so much fun and I really enjoy this world. I don't think I love the characters quite as much as I love Hadrian and Royce, but I'm getting there. They're growing on me and I'm definitely enjoying them a lot, so gave that one 4 stars too. And then moving on to my final 2 books, which were both 5-star reads this month, which is very exciting because I've been very harsh with my 5 stars this year and only giving out a few, if any, each month. So luckily this month I got 2 5-star reads. The first of those is this book, The Dragon Lord's False Idols by John Hollins. I loved this. It is a continuation of a series Book 2, it's so much fun. The first book is amazing, the second book is amazing. I genuinely feel like I like this one more, even though it started off a bit slower and I was taking longer to get into it. I still loved it by the end of the story, and I just think it's so fun. It broadens the world. I've done a full review on this, so I'll link that below. But I really would recommend checking this one out because it was a 5-star read and well worth picking up. And my final book, also 5 stars, is this one. Probably no surprise to any of you if you are long-term watchers of my channel, because I've given every book in this series 5 stars. But that is The Core by Peter V. Brett. He's one of my all-time favourite authors, and I love this world that he has created, and this is the conclusion to the series. He will be writing more in the world, but not in this particular series, and I just loved it. It was so good. Everything was resolved. I really enjoyed the progression of the female characters. I really felt like things developed and went further and pushed the boundaries, and he just did a lot of cool stuff that I didn't anticipate. And also there were a lot of moments where I just really felt like the characters had grown and developed, and the world had changed an awful lot in response to all the new discoveries and all the things that have happened over the series. It was just a fantastic series ender, which is exactly what you want when you've carried on with the series for like a solid 5 books. So I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. I would thoroughly recommend this series, and I will be doing a full review of this particular one very soon. So look out for that. So that is everything I read in the month of October. I have a couple of books that I'm planning to get through in November. It is non-fiction November, and there are some new releases that I want to get to, so I'm just going to pick and choose a bit, but I will be having a TBR going up fairly soon. Also, it is getting graphic in November, which means I will be reading lots of graphic novels, and I've already done a TBR for that, so I'll link that below if you've not already seen it, but do come and join in with us on that. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you very soon in my next video. Bye guys!
Thank you for watching my video today. Go pick up a book, then come back and chat with me again.